The Council of St. Andrew Lutheran Church created and approved a Plan Together action plan. The plan includes 3 phases before returning to a quote-unquote normal situation at church. The phases include the size of groups of people in the church at one time, how funerals and weddings will be managed, confirmation and Sunday school, and Sunday worship. They tasked the Plan Together task force with creating the necessary criteria for moving through the phases of that plan. When deciding when to move between various phases, the task force wanted to use measurable data, something to point at and say, this is why we decided to open. The data should show a downward trend in cases for a period of 4 weeks. Why 4 weeks? That would be enough time to compensate for small blips or spikes in the data. While 2 weeks sounds nicer, that might not be enough time to compensate for those blips. Is 2 weeks really enough time to show a trend? The question becomes, which data to use? Daily case numbers would certainly show what is happening in Marathon County, but would be subject to blips and spikes. The data could look like a roller coaster. Hospitalization rates would show the seriousness of cases in our area, but there can still be large numbers of cases and small number of people in the hospital due to quarantines. Percent positive cases, or the percent of all tests that come back positive, is a great statistic to use. However, it depends on the accuracy in the system, and that hasn't always been the case. There have been delays in the inputting of negative test numbers into the data system, which can affect this number. And also, if there's a circumstance where the total number of available tests is limited, only people with symptoms could be the ones that are tested, and this could skew that number. In the end, the task force decided to use 2 statistics that are available to us from the state's Department of Health Services: burden and trajectory. Burden is the number of positive cases in a county per 100,000 residents of that county in the last 2 weeks. Basically an average over the last 2 weeks of the number of positive cases. Why per 100,000? Think of it like per capita type of data. Doing this allows one to compare county to county. If I say Marathon County has 200 cases, is that good or is that bad? Is that high or is that really low? What if I say Iron County, way up north, has 200 cases? Is that better than us? Worse? Looking at the number per 100,000 residents allows you to determine that. Now, Marathon County has roughly 100,000 residents, so this number is pretty close to the number of positive cases in our county. Once you obtain that burden number, the state, DHS, uses that number to assign a status of low, moderate, moderately high, or high. And it is that value status that we will be using later on. Trajectory is the percent change from week to week. Are we going up, down, or staying about the same? This statistic from the state defines shrinking as a 10% change down, growing as a 10% change up, and no significant change as being in the middle of those two. You can have case numbers declining by 5% each week, and that is still, quote, no significant change. So let's put this all together. 4 weeks of low to moderate burden, basically 50 cases or less in the county, coupled with flatlined or downward trend in the number of cases. Do that, and St. Andrew transitions to phase 2. What happens at phase 2? In short, larger groups can meet in private in church, but there's still no indoor worship in church. Four more weeks of that moderate to low burden, coupled with flatlined or downward trend in the number of cases, and we transition to phase 3. In phase 3, we can begin social distance worship inside church. What does that mean? Keeping families together, but they're distanced 6 feet apart from one another. That's approximately 80 people in the sanctuary, or 120 people in Fellowship Hall. 120 was the approximate attendance of people at the outdoor worship at State Park Speedway on the 16th. Now, the transition out of phases has not been determined. This would include worship without any social distancing guidelines, which is something that no churches are practicing at this time. So let's answer some common questions. Yes, it's true that testing more people can lead to more positive tests. But if positive cases are identified and isolated before they can spread to other people, less spread of the virus will occur. And with less spread, it is possible that less positives in the community will occur, which is really the goal. Why are some churches open and not St. Andrew? The church has never been closed. The building, yes, but not the church. We are the church, and the work of the church has continued throughout the pandemic. It's important to note that not every Lutheran church is affiliated with the ELCA. Without going too deep into the theological weeds of the differences between them and the ELCA, the LCMS and WELS have different organizational structures than the ELCA. Their member churches are given less guidance from central offices, and thus are making decisions based on different criterias and different guidances than we are. Both your church council and the Plan Together task force have set a goal for St. Andrew to have no community spread from our worship services. While there is a saying that there is no such thing as bad publicity, community spread from St. Andrew would not be a good thing to be publicized. This follows the 8th commandment to love our neighbor and to care for our neighbors. It cannot matter what Zion, Emmanuel, Mount Olive, St. Peter's, or any other local Lutheran or Catholic churches are doing. Our decision must be based on what is best for St. Andrew in our unique circumstances. The 9th commandment teaches us not to covet. We should want what is best for our church. And the Plan Together is a result of that desire, the best for St. Andrew and the safest transition for all members of the congregation. For the Plan Together Task Force, I'm Jeremy Hoffman. Thank you, and God bless.